We're live.
Excellent. Hello world, this is Naiji Temple, the Naiji Dragon Fleet. We'll again be doing some detective work on the human condition and the meaning of existence. Tonight, we'll be focusing on a question from Multi-Rational about the pros and cons of established statehoods versus game-changing movements. Okay, we will introduce ourselves and then we'll just get to it. I am Naiji Coach.
I'm Naiji Mitchell.
I'm Naiji Ben.
And this is Naiji Glenn.
Excellent. So the post here, we'll start with, as is our way, Nai, of how to come at it. And we'll make sure, this is where the caginess comes in, that we're not going to be pinned in any way from finding the highest truth on a subject by the approach, by the framing. And so I think there is an issue here of saying the advantages of the statehood side and the disadvantages advantages of the statehood side and the disadvantages of the change side. Okay, I think that's an excellent question, and I think if someone could go in and update his post right now, let's actually have that be the question. Say, I'm particularly interested in myself, the advantages of the statehood side versus the disadvantages of the change side. That's going to be the first sentence. But we're going to change the name of this post to being pros and cons of established statehoods versus game-changing movements. Because that's the umbrella we'll be dealing with to answer Multi-Rational's particular emphasis or area of focus of that. Does that make sense, everyone?
Yes, would you like me to change it, or is someone else on it already?
Yeah, please go ahead. Thank you. So we're going to take the current thing now and that ... and make that kind of one thing, and that'll be his particular inquiry.
So can you tell me what the title should be again?
Yes. In fact, we'll leave that pros and cons. We'll just say established statehoods versus game-changing movements.
Statehoods.
And maybe in parentheses afterwards, like, that's fine. I think pros and cons are implied.
We'll make this curious about the advantages and the disadvantages.
And in fact, I'm actually wanting to adjust that a little bit. And this really gets into it. The most important thing to get the right answer is to ask the right question. So I think saying versus even is throwing me a little bit. I actually want to call this C and C. Capital C, lowercase c, and capital C.
And change versus just to and?
Yes, exactly.
Because
that really opens it up with nothing really leading us. We don't want to be led anywhere when we try. Even though we want to come at a certain thing, if we go that right away, often that will lead the answers you need from highest truth. So you want to make sure you're getting the highest truth from it, and then you pick out the case file you want to work on. Does that make sense, everyone?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so the topic is now C&C between established statehoods and game-changing movements. All right, and then we will talk about, he's interested in the advantages of statehood and the disadvantages of the change side. I think that's what he thinks is kind of coming out to him, and I believe he's sort of just throwing it out there. So we understand that he's not really making any strong assertions. He's just kind of talking out with other Naiji of what he thinks he may be seeing. That
Yeah, and he does say that at the end. He doesn't mean
Exactly.
to push one side or the other. That's not what he's doing.
Exactly. So we'll take it from that point of view. So anything that we're actually like correcting or saying yes or whatever, we understand that he's just playing and speculating here, and that's good to do. Kind of feel things out, but you'll then have to kind of get it meets form. Your potential ideas meet what happens when they try and take form. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and read through. Starting with, is it done, Mitchell?
It's done.
Okay, I'll refresh then.
Tell me what you think.
And You see it? Oh, nice and pretty. Nice and pretty. Okay. Let's see. Let's go ahead and start that first major paragraph. You want to start with that, Mitchell, and then the next paragraph will be Ben, then Glenn, and then I'll take the last one.
Sure. All right then. So this is like an extension of the previous discussions that we've had about statehood versus change. One advantage of the statehood side is communication. It is easier to communicate using established... Oh, should I read it first, or are we just going to like say it as we go?
I think probably say as we go. That seems to be natural, and then we'll
Okay.
keep.
So I just wanted to keep that in mind as I was reading it. Okay,
Yes,
anyway.
Thank you. Yeah, be ready to pause. 'Cause
Okay.
I feel ready to drag and jump.
Okay. One advantage of the statehood side is communication. It is easier to communicate using established concept as opposed to new concepts.
Okay. I'm going to question that.
What if the new concepts are about communication?
Right. And oh yeah, there's oh yes. Okay, so I think we have to go to like the basic core elements we're talking about here. And two that I think seem to be very important, because he has a few core elements, and at certain points I think he may transpose or overlap them in ways that may or may not go right. It's important we get a handle on that early on in this conversation. Okay, so talking about new, and then also talking about, he's kind of implying it, doesn't say it, but basically superiority. Easier to communicate kind of means superior communication, I believe. If I'm wrong on that logically, someone check me, but I think he's implying it seems like an advantage, and that is
Superior medium, you mean?
right. Well, it's superior. The statehood side has an advantage that way, because he did state it as he thinks there's advantages. So I believe he's stating his
Yes, I do agree with that.
advantage. Okay,
That's what
so
it's saying.
perceived advantage and new. I'm going to touch those, and I think we'll be revisiting what I'm saying here quite a bit throughout. One is superiority. If you look at things when they are well-oiled, that is an advantage. But it's also an advantage to work with a better methodology. So established ways of doing things were superior to, let's say, you had the Pony Express, and then there's the telegraph. Only a few people could afford it. Only a few people could understand in the beginning, but then more and more people understand it, and so on, and it has an innate advantage, which I'll get to in a second with the newness. And whoever used it, they get this advantage, which is why, over a period of time that was relatively short, everyone was using the telegraph. Just like everyone's, not everyone, but a large portion of the world uses the internet now, considering how long it's been around. It's quite stunning. Okay, so there's that, but then there's all the glitches. And you can focus on either one, but it's a balance and change flow between when you realize that you can do this methodology and it gives you a big advantage versus there's no current software for that. There's no current infrastructure for that. There's no current lexicon for that. So it's a balance. But natural law has clearly said they're equal because of how it's laid out the mojos with the change flow and how much it is equal, the NES channel and the VES channel. But there is a constant sort of checks and balances of which one has the most advantage. I'm going to actually say that yes, it can seem like overall there is an advantage to establish things because of civilization. But that's only a short time period in the overall truth of how humans do what they do. And it still never actually changes natural law. So any perceived strength in that regard is an illusion. It doesn't ever have that power. And if it makes anyone believe that, their Nye really needs to assert itself that at no point does being a Nye or anything else cool or punishable under law ever change how humans work. So if you ever feel that, immediately know that's just not true. The data doesn't support that at all, and so that's actually a perception. All statehoods want to actually be perceived as having way more power than they actually do. That's politics posturing 101. Statehoods always put their best foot forwards, and they always try to portray, the strength, the largesse, the wonder of their state. Okay, the other major point is new. If you look at it from the point of view of Nez, it can seem superficially that Nez is about new, and actually it's not. Technically, and it's a very important one if we're going to address this case accurately, if you get technical with it, it is undiscovered and or unconnected.
Right. It expands the context.
Exactly. But if it's actually real Nez, not fake Nez, in which case Vez will check it. And it'll be a fad, and it'll just go away quickly. But the internet is not a made-up superior way to communicate in a mass scale between humans. That's true. And natural law allows for it. It allows that technology to be created, and it bonus stacks humans the way that it does. So, kind of like you look at like a game, HRL RPG, that bonus was always there. So it's not like the Nez newly put into natural law that gravity works the way that Einstein thought it did. It always did. It was beyond ancient. I mean, the way gravity works, the way gravity worked from the beginning. So technically, it's always been here. Just no one noted it.
Mm-hmm.
So because of that, if the newness is you had to keep making language. That's a pain in the butt, and that's the rough side. The strength side is if you discovered or connected parts of natural law that are actually there, there's no higher authority. Everyone's going to have to deal with that. In fact, they already are. They just didn't know it. That's important. As opposed to like the novelty of, oh, this is a new way of doing fashion or something, and like, oh, I don't like it, and I'm going to kill people who do that fashion, and now the fashion isn't here anymore, no one cares. Okay, but if you're actually saying equals MC squared, and you try to actually like make that go away, if that's true, it's always been true, and someone else is going to find that too, and technically, all your calculations are still running on that, which is why the ones you have wrong are going to stay wrong. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
That's very important because the newness, you could have the newness is a critical philosophical concept here, a logical concept, or premise really, is the Nez adding new, like out of nothing. No, it's finding.
Exactly. It sees patterns, it scopes a perception that you didn't really have before.
Exactly.
Yeah, expands the scope.
But that was always there. And so one, as far as we'll say with 9G, as a Nye argument, it's the supreme argument because there's no argument with how gravity works. It just does. It works the way it works. So people thought that if you dropped a bowling ball that weighed a certain amount of weight and another thing of pillows that weighed the same amount of weight, they'd fall different, but they don't. Not if you isolate it from wind factors. So once that's proven, you can do that anywhere, and no matter how stupid you are, you're going to be hit by that repeatable experiment. You can go to anywhere, and they'll do that experiment to prove to you that is a fact. That's a fact of natural law. So, one, it just is. But then getting to the G, it's new. E equals mc squared, it's new. That's true. Darwin's evolution of species, origin of species, that's new, but it has this advantage called fossils. You know what I mean? The new expanded scope of the galaxy, that's a lot more complicated in the universe than we thought it was just our solar system or just the Milky Way. However, those pesky Hubble telescope pictures just keep making more and more of that picture, and nothing is trumping that story. There's no aha to beat that. So Nye with G, like the G of it, yes, you'll have to make up a lot of new words. You'll have to be eloquent. You'll have to demand people's attention. That's all true. Upside is you have the greatest product ever. You can predict rain. You can make blood coagulate better than anyone else can because they don't know how it works. I mean, if you actually have that power, you'll have to explain it. You got to tell them, I really need you to wash your hands in the surgery room. Like, what? Like, trust me. Let's just do an experiment here. If we do that, if the mortality rate does not improve. And guess what? It will. Because that's just how shit works. You know what I mean? So do you have to confront doctors, do it the old way? Yes. Do you have to explain to them hygiene and what that means? Yes. Is it a lot of work? Yeah, there's like a whole bunch of protocols, and yeah, that's a lot of stuff to change the way they used it, where they didn't think about how hygiene affected bacteria and whatnot. However, it's the truth. All the deaths you didn't know why they died last year happened because of that. It's newly discovered, but that force was already there. So one, already Trump, and then the Xi explaining it. I have a really good card. I can predict what's going to happen again and again and again. When it comes to humans being convinced of who's right, there's nothing more powerful and never has been than I can say what's going to happen and it happens. And you go, that was luck. Okay, then this is going to happen, and it happens. It's luck. It's like, at some point they'll have to call you a devil and try and kill you because it's so fucking persuasive if you can just keep saying what's going to happen and it happens. So it's a balance, but that's a huge advantage in that it was always there, and if you can figure out how it works, you can just go, aha, aha, aha. You can just keep making whatever, like little flame spell in your hand whenever you want, because you know how butane works. You're like, what? That's crazy. And now you're the tribal god because they've never seen someone with a butane lighter. So, I mean, it goes both ways. Yes, it freaks people out, and yes, it freaks people out because that's natural law has always said that's how fire works, and now you know.
Now it's magic.
And but it'll go from unknown magic to known magic to usable magic, and then from there it starts working down the change flow to where everyone's doing it. Like, oh yeah, everyone's
until nobody even thinks it's magic anymore.
Exactly. Like, everyone's got torches now. It's not even a thing.
It's funny to think about layers and like, whoa, fire magic.
What loser doesn't have a torch outside their tent? Come on. So, but yeah, but I mean, if you think about it, if you actually have fire, as it first came out, just imagine this, to where we are now. In the beginning, there's lots of places that, one, they just are scared of fire. So you have all the elders and all their craft people and all the warriors and all the slaves and everything. They're like, nah, we'll pass on fire. And you're like, no, I'm pretty sure this fire thing's cool. But it's a balance, and there can be generations where they'll outlaw fire. We don't do fire around here. That's the devil's work or some shit. And so they may go a whole generation, 10 generations, but somewhere, you'll find another person going, holy, is that for real? And then you'll do it. And whenever you tap into the bonus stacking area of the HRL RPG, no one goes back. Not once you figure out you can do. I can have unlimited lives. You know what I mean? I can have super jump. I mean, no one's going to give that back up, and that's just silly. So you just have to find people who will be awed by it in a way they find usable. Once you do that, they will never go back to not using the internet, not by choice, and they will be a super powerful voice convincing other people. So statehoods never actually take away truth. Nye, and G, word of mouth. That will never go away. You'll always need word of mouth. People actually telling other people why something's so.
Yeah, gossip, word of mouth, all that sort of stuff. Word gets around. That guy over there, he created fire, and he created the wheel too.
Right. And that's why statehoods, they can seem very powerful, and they are. I'm not saying they're not, but it's a balance, and a fairly geometric balance. If you look at the way mojos are distributed, it's quite. I mean, it pretty much says no. You gotta do both, pretty much equally. Is if you look at how much effort and anxiety is placed by statehoods each generation, each cycle within generations. Why? Nye. Because Nye, there's a way to things that has never been a way any statehood has ever done it. And they know this. In their bones, they're aware that they're saying it's this way in Uruguay or Russia or Japan or whatever, but in their heart of hearts, they know other parts of the world, they do it other ways, and that works too. And in my own country, a few hundred years ago, they did it different, and that worked okay too for a while then. So I mean, in your heart of hearts, the Nye will tell you, no, no state is actually doing it in a way that represents how humans do it. That's never existed. So that's always going to leak out. Next, the Xi. People, whether they know it or not, are influenced by this. They like, for example, you can tell like an IG they need to marry this person to link these two families together. That's not going to stop them wanting to be with an Ijai. It's not going. I mean, even if they marry that person or whatever, like at no point will you ever stop that mathematical magnetic power. That's just happening. So they always need to kind of keep it down. They have a lot of power to keep it down. Z force. Z-force is very powerful, and then by accumulation. Those are powerful, but equal. And I don't think you can look at it in a way than equal if you look at, one, how mojos are designed, and then in history, it's just cyclical. If states are so powerful, how come it's such a big deal when they last a while? Bam, right there you go. Because Nye and Xi is constantly making them have to reform or get, revolution. I mean, what's the oldest? In fact, I mean, is there anyone who can claim to be like over 1,000 years old, really, and not have any change in the ideology or things like that, where like natural law has proven, oh, that's not true, or it didn't work out for you? No.
It's always just been humans, and then before that, it's always just been natural law.
Are we ever going to keep reading again?
We are, but I'm glad you brought it up, Mitchell. This is something I very commonly do. It's really, really important. For example, if you're going to teach someone how to do better in a sparring match, you can go directly to the individual positions that in the match they lost got them in trouble. They did not do the correct things. Mm-hmm. But actually, more important than this, and if you've done debating or tennis, you'll know what I'm talking about. It was the approach. I wasn't hard enough, or I wasn't cold enough, or I wasn't calm enough, or I wasn't something enough, and I didn't believe in enough, and I wasn't into it enough. I need to get dialed in. I need to get dialed in into the more proper approach. And now from that spirit, I'll then go into all the positions of the match I need to work on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, otherwise, motivating.
Exactly. So otherwise, what you do is you go through the tennis match and you adjust the strokes so that you fix that individual thing. But really, it was the constellation of all those things that made the loss. So you have to figure out what was the overall issue. And often it's like a stance. And you define what's the premise? The premise of how I'm going to win. Yeah, you need to like coalesce a new premise. And with that new premise, then you go through and hit all the things. Nye does it all the time. Like you'll see in detective shows, for example, where you keep changing, who the actual culprit might be based on new evidence, and that reconstellates all the other evidence now based on that. You know what I mean? There's no point in revisiting to all of the individual nuggets of it without knowing the new thrust, the premise. All right, but yes, now let's dissect.
I was about to say, the reason I brought it up, though, is precisely because I think we have established it fairly well now.
Yes, agreed. No, thank you. You are totally correct.
All right. Well, anyway, I don't even. Okay. Our foundation of communication is extremely biased toward the known instead of the unknown. Now, I might just be projecting my own inability to communicate effectively, but I think it's safe to say that using established words are generally safer.
Yes, I actually will go with that. You're basically talking about gambling. So, I mean, we can get very technical with this, even stay away from Jez, but it applies to the Jez side of change flow as well. But in computers, anytime you get new technology, and there's usually like at least like 5 generations out in the market, the latest generation gives you bonuses that blows away the last generation. Always. Otherwise, it wouldn't put it out. Always what goes along with that is risk. What? Glitches.
Bugs, yeah, exactly.
It's always the most glitchy, and you're making a trade-off. Do I want to have this new graphics card platform that plays games like nothing else, I may also have to be doing some more troubleshooting.
You know, with software, they tend to release like kind of like a beta, like of the newest version.
Right.
But that doesn't quite have all the kinks worked out. But you know, there are a couple new features that some people might be interested in.
Yeah.
But you also have the safe version, which is like the last fully tested, you know, version that they had. That for most people would probably be best. You know.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's not a direct comparison because obviously, you know, sometimes it's you know, you don't want to say like for most people it's better to go with, you know, an older version of anything, but
no, and I think the way of looking at it is really not like a either or. It's more of a spectrum, because there's several. Like I said, in most software kind of apps these days, there's like 5 generations on the market. Like for something like, you know, basic kind of processing, you'll have stuff that's like cutting edge, that's doing things that is like the level that could go like in a professional presentation.
Mm-hmm.
And then usually the same kind of application will have things that are on the market for schools, like that are government grants, and they're usually like 5 generations back, super safe, everything worked out. I mean, and they work on older machines that you don't have to spend new money. That's a classic thing. With NES, you'll use, oh, this is cool, it's cool. Oh, but it doesn't do this. Oh, I have to buy this new buckle. And that's part of it. I mean, when you're actually busting out the new Iron Man suit, there's lots of things that can go off. The upside is when it's working, no one can touch you. And so there's a trade-off between the various, change flow of how much that works for you as an advantage for you. But natural law has already spoken. For the human species, you want all 4. You want people, you know, wave 4, who go with it as absolutely known. You use the words. Everyone you're going to talk to in your country or social circle or political circle, whatever, they're going to know what you're talking about. They know those terms. You're citing things that are known to be winners. So you're going to be given a lot of things for free. This is like stock market. You're going to get a very steady dividend. You can expect, most likely, that if you do this, I'll get returned this. That works. However, there's lots of opportunities that the human species would be missing. On the extreme side is the first wave, what we are, which is if you're good at putting patterns together, and then when you trail a pattern out, if there's missing parts, you're like, I'll find them, I'll make them, I'll create them. And NES Alpha are confident on that. Then the advantage is I'm using this kind of, you know, cell phone that no one else really has right now for like 3 months. That's 3 months I get to run the board. If that's the thing I'm into, being ahead of people at this, for example, or case solving or problem solving or just building stuff using this tool, that is 3 months. Because there's like the accumulation that the Wave 4 focuses on. That's impressive. Do you know what I mean? 1 billion people doing something for 1,000 years. That's impressive. So if you go down that market, you can guarantee that 1 billion people know what you're talking about and have at least some passing interest in that product. Okay. On the other hand, but you're not going to actually get very large gains. But they'll be steady. There's more a feast and famine with NES, where you actually get huge gains and then you have to problem solve. And when you're problem solving, the steady gainers catch up to you. But then every time you have an advantage and it's flowing, no one can touch you and you take all the advantages on the board. And I mean, the natural law is pretty much spoken in that it's evenly distributed as far as Mojo designs, and as far as we can tell, it looks like that's distributed equally of the amount of designs in the populace. So 16 designs are balanced equally, and the actual distribution of the populace so far seems to be fairly even. So there may also be an over attribution of like things like statehood to particular waves. I think Mitchell mentioned that, or no, was it Ben? About Xeni aren't really that far on the establishment side.
Oh yeah, I mentioned that. Yeah.
Okay. I'll let you guys go ahead and jump in and start dissecting now.
Dissecting the paragraph?
Yep.
Oh, I know. I thought that was anyway.
No. Go ahead.
So another thing I had to say about this safety, I mean, I didn't know exactly what he meant. That was a great explanation of what you said. There's also another element of safety, which I think possibly Ned's sort of communication can do. It's a different kind of thing. It still has that glitch element, maybe, but it's communication that other people don't really understand, so you're able to communicate in a more secretive way to protect the information, whereas using more established words, you couldn't do that.
That's true.
More established communication routes or mediums.
That's a very good point. The challenge
Ned does like this, like Naiji in particular. I definitely have an affinity for kind of cryptographic ways of communicating, and that is an element of safety as far as not letting other people know what you're talking about.
For sure. Because with new change, you'll need to actually find appropriate carriers without being blocked by anti-carriers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and if you can explain things in a way that gets across your ideas, but is also able to be understood by other people, then that's the way I think that should be used.
For sure. Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Anything else on that point?
I'm good, but anyone else?
All right, well, we can move on then. The problem with things like poetry and art is that it only resonates with those that are also able to appreciate. That almost gets at what I was saying. Like,
Yeah,
the
exactly.
disadvantages is almost like less universally. It's not like it's established, but at the same time, it's meant for some more personal type of communication, I guess.
Yeah. Also, art.
It's more universal.
I think I challenge that one statement. There is more to art than being understood.
Right.
Both individually and collectively. I'll start individually. Individually, to do art, you have to channel your peak pathway in a way that often states don't approve of or support. So the act of doing art for the individual is asserting your independence. So right there, any work of art that comes from an artist's actual own place, their own inner place, that is actually asserting the individual as opposed to the state for themselves. Next, for the collective, that also resonates for people observing it. Just like when one revolution happens in a town, another town that may seem some sort of similarities can be spurred into their revolution by seeing it. That happens all times in history where revolutions have a cascade effect. Okay? So I don't need to understand Japanese art like a Japanese person would. But I can understand seeing that someone is actually doing something they feel like doing. You can tell that. I don't know what it means, but I know it means what they wanted it to mean, if that makes any sense. So I can appreciate the artistic process as a independent declarative without actually. Also, too, like art, I might even get it. I don't like it. Still, I can appreciate that the artistic expression is actually like saying, I have something I need to say, and I'm going to give it voice. Do you know what I mean? It announces independence.
Right.
So even if people don't know all the other meaning, which of course is a great loss, but that part happens for the individual as soon as they do it. If no one ever sees the artwork, the artist actually gets. If you actually go in your basement and paint something that you in the state would have a problem with, but you did in your basement, defiance. It's defiant. It is right there. That's an act of defiance. And then if you do publicly put that out, even if it's not some state like it's totally aggressive towards the fact that it's not. The state may be against it, or at minimum, it wasn't on the state's agenda. The state's agenda was like you become an accountant or something useful. Art. The fact that it's not innately useful is its strength in a way. This is like the way to look at it two different ways. That's what makes it an act of individual expression of independence. And as far as going with what the state wants, it's an act of defiance. I'm going to take a time out from what citizens normally do to go paint this. Because, I mean, generally speaking, unless it's state-sponsored art, which generally does not look like individual art, Individual art from every culture has a look to it. They look totally different, while they just don't look the same as state-sponsored art. Propaganda art just doesn't look the same. A corporate art. Although it does have some benefit, of course.
All right. So yeah, maybe some Vizes understand art. What I'm trying to say here is that Nijez seems to be in this precarious position, knowing where the Vizes is coming from, but the Vizes can't see where the Nijez is coming from. Wouldn't that be the other way around? I mean, not the Vizes and Nijez stuff, but the precariousness. Why would it be precarious to know where they're coming from and they don't know?
I think I see what he's saying, but I like what you bring up earlier, Mitchell, about how it's really one the same thing. It's an advantage and disadvantage for both parties at the same time. The person who's doing the more literal way, for example, it's going to be steady, so they're not going to trip up much. But that steadiness also means they don't really get bonuses that a person who's working in two streams get. The second conversation. So the fact that the Nez generally is tracking the details as they relate to patterns, they're going to drop stuff more. The upside is they're actually working with like an additional sort of context that the other party isn't working with. So you gain insight, but you lose consistency, and you also lose certainty of where things are going to be.
Mm-hmm. Very true. Okay, fair enough.
But I think that means by being precarious.
Yeah. So the Nijez, the precariousness for the Nijez as opposed to the Vizes is the kind of lack of surety and consistency. Right. But the precariousness of the Vizes is I don't know. I precisely the same thing. That it's so steady. They're not going to be able to, I guess, shift as quickly. They're not going to be able to see as many hidden things.
Yes.
You had a moment there where you were trying to figure the right word there, Mitchell, and I think that is for a very important reason. And something he's implying here, I think we may have just flushed it out, is the word precarious. I think it needs to be corrected. Because it's not precarious. It just may seem that way. If you look at precarious as an overall versus moment to moment, that's a very important difference. I think we need to highlight it.
True.
If you look at the moment to moment for Nez, in the moment to moment, it's precarious because you're jumping from stream to stream and you're not sure if your next jump's going to be on
risk-taking, jumping into the unknown, all of these things are very important to Nez.
Yes.
So there is going to be that precariousness.
Exactly, in moment to moment, but
right.
Not overall. And he's implying overall precariousness, and it's not. For me, if I'm on the mat of life in any way, it is not precarious that my Nai is going to give me a cunning advantage. Will I try to do some artistic-y stuff that will not pan out and I'll have to go, oops, scrap that, that was a wasted week? Yes. In that week, it was precarious, but not as an overall life strategy. As an overall life strategy, I'm going to get...
It's well tested.
Yeah, as a Nai Alpha, I'm going to get way more advantages for being ingenious than I am going to have problems with glitches. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So there's like, I don't know what the math of this is, but you have like the 1-to-1 of like each coin toss, and then you actually have like aggregate of like overall performance. So I think it's very critical because otherwise it couldn't possibly be precarious because if it had, natural law would have made it go extinct. You can't, natural law said you simply cannot be in a precarious evolutionary position and stay around. You will be taken out of the game, or you'll have to evolve into something else that won't get killed or die off. So the fact that Mojo has been around for as long as it has, with the channels as they are, and with as many Naiji in the tribe as they are, it's just not true that it's precarious. Mm-hmm. All the specialty Mojos have advantages. There's no Mojo that is not gifted, and the gift Naiji have is cunning insight. And for Ni Alpha, same thing. They're going to have cunning, clever ingenuity on things. So if it was precarious, and this is very high level Ni here, if it was precarious on a large term scale, it would have died off.
Yeah.
That design would have died off. So it simply is not precarious. If you look at it from the point of view of like an evolutionary thing and as an overall life power, it clearly must be very non-precarious. It is the dominant thing we know of. Mojo, the Mojo phenomenon, the way it works, is the most dominant phenomenon we are aware of, and actually says you really want to have at least a quarter of the population working that way. It is literally the most advantageous design we know that nature does.
Yeah, I think that's something that distinction of moment-to-moment precariousness as opposed to global kind of precariousness. I think that is something multirational could probably accept.
Yeah. Cool.
All right then. Heck, the Najez themselves sometimes don't know where they're coming from.
Nope.
That's actually true. And it's like we kind of just, get something from our spirits, and we have like these sort of vague notions of what we should do, and then it does actually pan out.
True. But again, a disadvantage is really an advantage, because the more NES you have, there is going to be a more confusion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that means you ask questions to clear the confusion up. So there's a pro to that as well. You're more inclined to try to answer things to make the confusion clear.
All right then. The Najez has to go through various stages of demassification, whereas the Vizez can communicate directly.
Okay, yes and no. Since he mentioned demassification, that's good. We'll balance them, because those are balancing points, but he didn't actually balance them. He implied something that the Vez would have that isn't actually there. You do have direct, contiguous access. We talk about Vi, for example. It's a big deal. Contiguous access, and V is immediate access. So immediate and contiguous access. However, there is a price you pay. There is a loss in universality. The more specific a tradition is to a region, the more contiguous it is to all the experiences those locally have had. You'll get very little resistance locally. But as you try to make that contiguous story go out to the rest of the populace, it will not scale. So demassification, you're right, cannot go directly to things. But, hence demassification, it has the entire planet. Whatever the entire field is, it can go to every person, every state, everything, everywhere. That's what demassification does. And puncture and pipeline, what NIG do, means that we can just go wherever we need to go. We're a self-contained unit. It doesn't matter what the surrounding environment's doing. We'll just do a little boop, and how that area is doing this now. So that makes sense?
Yes, it does make sense to me.
So you're within a limited context. For example, and this is like basic politics, for example, basic being like a corporate leader. If you want to be and both are important. If you actually want to be helping things in an immediate area, you need to be highly relatable. But if you actually want to use a strategy where you're accessing a larger area, you're going to have to be able to contextualize more. When you do that, you lose the specificness, that direct contact. That's the price that is paid. But the advantage is you can go to more pools. So the more specific you are, fewer pools you can go to, but you can go right to it and get immediate access.
It's like bonus stacked in that pool. It's like locally bonus stacked.
Locally, exactly. Locally bonus stacked versus globally bonus stacked, and clearly both.
Yes, precisely. All right. Or, I don't know, I just had these experiences where I just see things moving really quickly between people when you use quick and easy to access standard words or procedure. Well, in that, yeah, just like we were saying, in a certain local area, that is going to be an advantage of the Vez. But where in Najez, you innately have preferences for new ways of organizing that just don't easily sync well with people.
Okay, I think the one way to look at it is conceptualizing this correctly, how things happen. Basically, we're trying to do something as humans, and when you're trying to do something, you have to figure out what it is, and then you have to do it. Sounds simple, but it's not. And this is, I mean, there's a lot to how humans go about doing this. So, looked at from that perspective, the more NES you have, naturally means you're in the more learning phase. If you introduce new software at a company, there's going to be the learning phase. So you say, wow, it's really hard to get work done when I have to tell them how to use the start button. Yeah, I know, because this is the phase where you teach them how to use the computer, which will then lead to greater productivity. And so it's not like, oh, it's a challenge to productivity. That's learning. And
there's canvas.
And you can really think of like the change flow as a balance. We talk about change versus like the sameness, repetition. It's also, if you look at it, another way of saying it is learning and production. So you have to ponder, figure it out, and then you have to get stuff done. Wave 4 is about let's go with what we know and let's put up big numbers. Let's put in a 16-hour workday where every hour, every minute is putting up a score we know is going to score. That's important.
And everyone can understand and work with and communicate with both ends of the spectrum. Everyone has NES and BES powers.
Exactly.
So it's like even if you favor NES, like Bi Alpha can still have the ability to understand you.
Right.
So it's.
But it's balanced, and even the most I would say conservative companies still have to do this if they want to be a global powerhouse. You have to keep updating what are the current known to be best practices. If everyone else out there is using internet and you're going to be the one global company that doesn't use internet, that's going to be quite hard to do. So, does that make sense? So there's always going to have to be, okay, it looks like the new wave of natural law of existence is going to be an internet wave. We're going to need to have that. And so you're going to have to take, every company does this, you're going to have to take time to actually retrofit, to update your stuff to be able to run that software, because that's where the world is going, because that's a thing now, and so you don't want to lose out. So you'll have to invest. So I think a way of looking at it is sort of like investing in learning, and then you invest in production.
Yeah, it reminds me of like how, there's like the mailing, like how mail used to be done, or how mail can be done sometimes is like with actual like paper. That is something that they can't do anymore because internet made that obsolete. Right. But they're still able to do other things, which is like packaging.
Right.
That's still there. They still have that, but they had to like deflate how influential or how big they used to be. And until they can find some way to counteract with the internet, they're just gonna have to deal with that.
Yeah, sure. And then I mean, but you look at it, for example, like the automobile. When the automobile first came in, it's a classic example I think of change is it was competing against horses. And this may sound ridiculous now, but the horse beat the car at most things most of the time in the beginning. So why was it a thing? Because there's some people who actually can show how smart they are and thus improve their standing, that they can make this thing work. It opens up a door to other things. That's the value. It creates a potential for something to happen at the next level. Then there's also the fact that it does have an advantage that you can bring up. I guess that's what I kind of referenced there. You can up it. The horse is finite. And
right.
So you have two ways of looking at accumulating power. I can accumulate horses and skilled horse handlers. And that's a way, and for a period of time in history, which is not too long ago, there was like a war, and it took a few generations to actually completely go really into the car's favor. But what the thing was is how much could you leverage in getting more horses and more trained horse people versus leverages in new invention. So horses, you can get more of them, and everyone trades in that currency. But it's kind of one-to-one. Whereas with the car, it was going 50 miles an hour, now it's going 75, now it's going 100. And so the jumps are much larger. Does it make sense?
There's more potential for growth.
That's always the price of more speculative work, abstract work, is that the payoffs are bigger, but then there's periods where you don't get anything.
Yeah, it starts off smaller, but then when it does grow, it grows much bigger than anything that it was in competition with.
Correct. Because it basically is operating according to natural law principles that were always there, but no one knew it. So if you're operating by those principles, you're getting those bonus stacks.
Yeah. And it's hard. I mean, like a car is, it's not going to die on you. I mean, not in the way that like a horse would.
And seriously, you've said it funny, but that's actually a good point. Is often there are, besides the fact that over time the amount of horsepower a car had could overtake horses. I mean, that's a fact. Horses.
Yeah, it's just the wording is funny with the horsepower. That's why.
Yeah,
but that is a real measure. I mean, it's horsepower.
And I use it on purpose to highlight the fact that was used because there's a period of time when it was like a legitimate contest between horses and a car. Now it's funny because we have like 500 horsepower. That's like
1.6 horsepower.
So, but the reason that's even used is because it was actually a competition for a few generations. There were people who could legitimately say that's a waste of time. You're broke down more often than my horse is. I get to the various events in town more reliably than you do. There's truth to that.
Yeah. And my horse gives me. Yeah, they might say stuff like.
Go ahead. You're saying.
They might say stuff like, "My horse gives me affection, and I take care of it." Whereas the car, you can't have that same connection.
Well, and that is a real advantage. I mean, like to this day, you can't it isn't your car isn't like an animal. It can't.
That's true.
Companionship.
Yeah.
So, you could say that actually it still is an advantage, but
I totally agree. But in the argument that was originally put forward, they were talking more specifically about the transportation. Which one was the superior form of transportation and workload? And early on, the horses could trump the cars. But clearly, we are in car land now. So that means that cars were an advantage. First of all, natural law said that you can do that. That you can automate something on rolling wheels. And since that's a thing, that actually will eventually be, organically, operated 4 legs. I mean, it can't be automated electricity or other fuel source on wheels. But early on, there were few people that had that advantage, and then it spreads. And so, in any movement, the earlier in you are, you're getting different kinds of advantages. The 2 main ones are you're getting there first. So the upside is, yes, the car may have taken like 10 years to where it could outdo a horse. But if you actually started working with the car when the car came out, that means once everyone realizes that the car can outdo the horse, you're a 10-year veteran of this new technology. That's a massive advantage you get. So you get to go the period of time of people not realizing this, but if you speculated correctly, you're like, yeah, but this is going to be this is the way of the future. This is the way of the future, and I'm actually going to start putting my eggs over in that basket.
Yeah, I'm going to start investing in this because I know it's going to pay off much more later.
The other advantage is, it's the new part is you have more time, but also I say 3 advantages actually. Now I think of it, and I splice these last 2. One is it is a unique experience. That's a huge advantage if you're actually talking about what kind of life you've lived and meeting other people. Hence, Naiji, by the way, are extremely charismatic, and one of the things they do is they can show people new things they have. I have new food, new technology, new, rituals. Okay, so the newness is actually a very valuable experience, and that's just proven in history. Rich people, even old conservative ones, seek out artistic, visionary technology people to give them new experiences, to give them the Jaguar, to give them a personal submarine, to give them a rocket somewhere, because it's unprecedented and you want it. That's a fact. It is extremely desirable to have new apex experiences. Even if they're hard to get, even if they're glitchy, yeah, but it's the bee's knees. It's a fact because people keep doing them, and when rich people find out you can do them, they almost always do it. So, first is you get the inside track. Second is it's an unprecedented experience for you personally, and you can also brag about it. Which actually kind of brings the third one, is it shows your genius. And if you're the kind of person that is talking about valves and how valves go with wheels, and you're at some plant, some statehood, where they're doing valves and wheels, and you tell them that cars don't do it that way. You may not know this, but cars, which are the current most advanced valves and wheel mechanism, they do it like this. So you now have the trump card on any principles related to this. Does that make sense? You can go to any, and so for certain motors, and Najee for sure like this, and the Nijai as well, you can then go and school people on where the future is going to be. Now, different clients will be at different stages of the change flow, be more or less receptive. People who have a lot of things invested in doing it the old way, like, dude, I just bought my, like a 10-year supply of this old technology. That client is most likely not going to be looking for you. The client that will be looking for new is the old way, because of contestation, has squeezed them out. The current or old school will always be squeezing out some people that have a lot of talent, a lot of resource they can bring to the table, they're being squeezed out of the equation. And you bring them a new engine that will let them win the race next year. If they will take a risk, they'll do it, because it will be very advantageous for them if it worked out. Does that make sense? Change is always like that. I mean, it's a new thing, and it will automatically get bonuses because now you can crack atoms, but then who's in a market for it? I will give them that. The current marketplace is where it's at because of history. But it's the this was trippy. It's the history of the way of humans. At no point does the history of humans ever make the way of humans any different than it is. Despite humans always trying to say that, humans are like this or like that, that never changes anything. It will make it correspondingly challenging to get the truth out, but it never changes the truth. I'm sorry, I feel passionately on this case. I feel for Multirational because I think you guys, he feels Najee. He's trying to be a seeker, but he's under a lot of spells. There's a lot of powerful spells, and particularly if you're in certain countries that have more oppressive regimes, that can be very hard to shake off. So those of us who've been lucky enough to be around free thinkers and media that allowed us to expand our ideas without being impinged on should be really grateful. It helps our nod. So I hope we can help Multirational. We'll see. He's been doing good so far. And the way he phrased this shows he's trying to learn. Okay, we need to sign off here in a little bit, but I want to tackle this next one, which is equating change with chaos.
Oh, yes, this next paragraph. And I was supposed to read this one off, right?
Yeah, especially since he says it's literally chaos. Okay, okay.
Right.
I challenge that.
All right. Another thing is that the statehood side is literally stability itself, whereas the change side is literally chaos itself. Vez powers stress on building a strong foundation and finding ways to strengthen their position by incorporating new useful factions for further consolidation. I think both the Nez and the Vez powers want a strong foundation, right? Because if you're Nez, right, if you're talking about Nez, like incorporating new ideas does contribute to building a stronger foundation.
Right. That's a
Right.
the stronger foundation comes from actually knowing what truth is better.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you get a better understanding, then you'll have better building materials.
The powers that be are powers that just work together. Whereas I feel like the Naiji are always screaming at each other with their differing new views.
I
Well,
don't think the powers that be are more together than Naiji are. They're not the powers that be are fighting wars with countries that are bigger than the kind of argumentative feud that two Naiji might have.
yeah.
So
And it's
true.
like how unified are politicians?
Killing
Yeah.
millions of people.
Yeah.
The politicians are constantly competing with each other
Yeah.
all the time. A lot of
I
times,
think it's actually, yeah. I think this actually plays back to what we were talking before with the local and global.
Mhm.
Jimmy, where, I mean, he's saying that, we're saying here.
Yeah, that's so
Oh,
true. Because the domain of the Vez powers, where they're really strong, is in that local area.
Right.
But then they have issues in the
Everywhere
global area. The
Exactly.
Nez powers are really strong in the global, and in fact, it crosses boundaries. That's why they cross boundaries, why you can have art that can affect someone in a totally different culture. But locally, you sometimes have to, it's a little rough to try to make it work there.
It can
You
be,
have to kind of translate it.
and even for them to agree on themselves, which allows them to disseminate out to the locally, is this he's talking about. When they try to talk to each other, they argue fiercely. Yes, but that's because they're trying to see who has the correct universal answer.
Right.
Right. So if they actually, the upside, the downside is it's unknown. So everyone's trying to guess. If everyone's trying to guess on the unknown, there's going to be a lot of contradictory arguments. That's just the way of it. The upside is once the answer is found, it goes out to everything. Locally, upside. You tend to get a lot of consensus of opinion right out of the gate. Like, we're all going to have this Catholic ceremony on Saturday. Sound good, everyone? Yeah. $5 each for this coronation? Yeah. Okay, you're just going to get a lot of automatic agreement, not much argument. Except that's not natural law itself, although state what state it is. And so when it tried to say, ooh, the rest of the world should be Portugal. Yeah, no, they're not going to agree to that, and so you'll get automatic non-agreement.
Yes, but when you have E equals MC squared and you have repeatable experiments where you can test that, the rest of the world, at least a lot of it,
Yeah.
the ones that aren't like fundamentalists, will agree.
Yes.
And that's it. That's the kind of the contest there between the universality of new truth being discovered or connected, as opposed to I have built up a lot in this way.
Right, and Nez is not chaos. I mean, there's
No.
a math, natural law math to the truths that it's uncovering, that it's bringing in. It may seem like chaos to the Vez
Yeah.
powers because they don't understand it.
I think I might have the right word. And this can seem similar, but they are not. Upheaval.
Right.
Nez is upheaval the way you need to actually upheave soil to make new crops. So it's agitating, the dirt goes everywhere, and they have to like put things back in their place afterwards, so it's a bit of a ruckus. But that's part of things. Whereas
Right.
chaos is, it has no structure and never will. I mean, it actually is against structure.
That's
Like-
not true of the Nez powers.
No, Nez wants better structure.
No.
Yes.
Yeah, but in order to find that, you need to sort of like take things apart and, you know, put them in weird kind of combinations, and people might be looking at you like, what's going on here? And it seems chaotic to them, but really, it's
Yeah.
like, no, I can get this light bulb to work once I put these two things together, and then boom, here you go. You know,
The
like
chaos, the seeming chaos is really just kind of confusion. As, because they don't yet see, they don't have the scope of perception to see what the Nez does.
that. Yeah, chaos more than anything is a mindset that I think exists within the, you know, the mind. I don't think it actually exists in actual natural law. Though.
Yeah, I agree. It doesn't actually make any sense for it to.
Yeah, it's the same thing as like a paradox.
Yeah,
They don't exist in natural law.
I really
Like the way is non-way. You know, I mean, it's like
Yeah.
because exactly, if it was chaos, this goes back to the precarious thing. There's no species that we know of that has any part of their fundamental character that you could equate to chaos that exists. That's impossible. So right there, like, no, that cannot be the answer. Even though I think he's reacting to impingement he's getting from the world. But that's what the truth and data of truth helps you. You're like, no, if that was the case, we would be dead. You know what I mean? You can look at the design, you're like, I know you may be told that very strong by the state. They may even penalize you for thinking different, but that just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and if anything was caused by chaos, then why shouldn't it just degrade randomly for no reason at any point? There has to be some kind of coherent structure to it.
It's like
even with like quantum physics, which is like two things can exist at the same time in two different places. There's still structure to that. There's just we haven't wrapped our head around it, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's pretty trippy. But yeah, but I think some of his word choice kind of can show, which is why sometimes it's good to sound your words out so you can look at them.
I feel like that's what he's doing too, a little bit. He doesn't know exactly. He's not saying it like this is. He's just saying like maybe it is.
Exactly.
So I respect that.
I do as well. And myself, that's how I have to do it when I'm trying to figure myself out. Which is, it's a very private process. So I give him props for actually putting it out there like that because it's very raw.
Yeah.
Well, there are a couple more sentences.
Sure.
This is why I feel weird somehow when I think of Naiji as directives, to be agents of chaos. Just the worst ineffective way to
Sounds like the Joker.
Well,
Who is an IG?
it's good to we can confidently say that we are not agents of chaos. So
Okay, real quick here. I have to kind of say this here. I mean, if you look this way, like doing research project. That's like saying that when people are trying to figure out this current unknown part of natural law, and some of the smartest people in the world are all working on that case, and they put forward a multitude of differing opinions to solve that case, that's chaos. That's progress.
yeah.
It's called experimentation, discovery, and progress. So I mean, you know what I mean? Like it's so because it's the exact opposite of chaos once E equals MC squared is figured out to be true, because it never's like, oh, that's the answer. And then there's actually like an feeling.
Yeah,
And then-
Naiji are agents of natural law. That's what we are.
That's a
Yeah.
Like the whole thing with natural law teachers, we're agents of actually discovering natural law and then disseminating our discoveries.
We're an agent of natural law, and that natural law often causes upheaval for the powers that be,
Not chaos.
but not chaos.
Yeah.
Word.
Yeah. Periods of confusion where there needs to be sort of like light shined on the answer, and then once that's done, then it's not confusion anymore. It's like, yeah, okay, I get it.
All right. I think it's your turn, Glenn, for the third paragraph. And
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
I think maybe you can continue on actually, because it seems like it'll be more balanced that way.
It might be more. Oh yeah. I guess that does make sense because there is actually one
We have
after
to
that.
close out here pretty soon.
Right.
Maybe
Yeah, that's just something else.
I think we should continue on here because he kind of gets into some other things here about directiveness. Because he kind of shifted gears now. You know what I mean? He wants to talk about statehood and the individual. He start with statehood, the individual a bit. Then he kind of went to change flow, wave 1 versus wave 4. And now he's kind of shifted over into, Nai with G being rather yin for directives. That's like a whole other subject area. I think we should do it next time.
Although it relates to what we said, but yeah.
It
Sure,
does, but that's actually another discussion point.
Oh, no, I agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, of course it relates. But yeah.
One's like proper politics. The other one's like how do things change over time. But this one is how do directives get their way. I believe he segued into how do different directives get their way. All right,
Yeah.
that's a good conversation. Is it good we pause it for tonight though? Because I think that's a little too meaty to get into right now.
Yeah, and it's already 10:38 too.
Yeah,
We
but
did start kind of late though, so it's.
That's the problem, but I think for next time though that's worthy of a fairly in-depth area is because that's in the Naiji in particular, really good Naiji Temple, is the kind of directive we are. And he seems two issues: one, being confused about that, and as a part of that, devaluing or underestimating the power of what Naiji can do and how we do it. So that'd be a good one to get into, because that's an ongoing thing. In Naiji, the world will give you signals, and even yourself, when you get confused, when you get confused about your way, you can sometimes devalue it naturally. Just it's a tendency. Okay,
it's something that I think Naiji have to deal with a lot when it comes to this. The confidence, our confidence is constantly trying to be taken away from us a lot of times by the world. You know.
Yeah.
But that's why data and feats.
That's where Naiji get their egos, and that's actually the importance of it.
Indeed. Oh, I can tell we're hot.
Ferocious ego.
Okay. Next time, I can tell we're hot this one. All right.
Yeah, we have to remember to do this next time.
For sure. So next time, part 2 on Multi-Rationals Post.
Okay.
All right, everyone. Have a great night. That was fun.
Have a great night, everyone. That was really good.